August 26th, 1893. Saturday nights were usually nights when the master had guests come over to the estate for one of us, maids, to entertain. But this night was different, whilst remaining all too familiar. For some reason, the Count had bought a new girl to be brought in, and I was tasked with being her guide and prepping her for the world ahead. Since I did so well with Bernice, and I was the more trusted out of us, it was so strange to me that there would now be more than two of us, but apparently this was not the first time. I waited by the entrance like I had with my sweetheart, anxious to get things over with and to have the night finished. That oh-so-familiar carriage that every single one of us must have been brought on came into view and stopped in front of me. The passengers began to unload. The moment I set my eyes upon the girl who was nearly still a child, I felt a lump in my throat that came out of my frail lips as, "But she's so young," once the butler approached me. Terrell heaved out a strange sigh, almost indicating he was uncomfortable by the notion as well. He turned to me and said,
"That is neither here nor there, and most certainly not for either of us to converse upon."
It was not often that he would actually say more than a few words to me, especially if they weren't direct orders from our master. My heart shriveled up and sank at them, however, and this feeling grew heavier at his next words.
"You will take her to the dressing room and have her prepared for the night, as the master would like for her to perform as soon as possible."
I found it strange and peculiar that he was so eager for her to perform already. He would usually give us time before forcing us into the unexpected, but she had hardly been here for an hour, and I was to already prepare her to entertain. How was I expected to fake pleasantries when I was literally about to push this girl through the gates of hell? I thought back to the mindset I put myself in upon welcoming Bernice, and began with a, "Yes, sir," and ended with a, "This way, ma'am." After turning to the newcomer, I tried my best to give her a smile, to show her my best face. Fill her with hope. Give her an olive branch. The girl had a reaction all too similar to my Bernice, as she felt bewildered by my politeness and terminology used to describe her. She said,
"Mom? Me? I'm pretty sure I'm younger than you. Not to mention less refined. Call me Lisette. Or Liz, it's easier."
How casual and friendly she was being. Though the thought did keep repeating in my head with how right she was. She truly was indeed younger than me. She looked to be maybe still in her teens. I don't dare say that she could pass for older than 20, even if she was that old. What is with all these changes? We've all been close in age, all been somewhere in our mid-20s, maybe 30s, and all had been given time before we were made to perform. So why was she any different? What plans did Master have for her? Terrell scoffed behind me, causing me to jump in my spot and squeak.
"Stop your dilly-dally and get a move on. You do not need to stop for pleasantries. Hurry along. No time should ever be allowed to be wasted."
I heard the young girl murmur under her breath.
"Piss off."
I simply nodded my head and responded, "Yes, sir, of course. My apologies." My nerves must have been even higher due to the eagerness the master had for this newcomer to perform. I was not prepared to take on such a task already. "Please, follow me." On our walk to the boudoir, Miss Lisette continued to talk to me and ask questions. They were the usual inquiries any of us had upon coming to this manor, along with the exchanging of my name. It was hard to answer her questions about what was happening truthfully, for not even I knew the truth of our situations. The girl almost became overly defiant when I pussyfooted around answering. I tried to warn her that defiance was neither tolerated or encouraged in this place, and if she wanted to do any good for the inhabitants here, she would do best to remember that and try to obey. Even though I was supposed to fill her with hope, I worried that I only scared her more. In time, the young girl let me take her into the dressing room and prepare her for the performance. She told me how she played cello and talked of her French and Irish ancestry. I dare say that the gown our master picked out for her was one of the most refined that I had seen thus far. It was almost entirely appropriate for a well-educated and high-class lady, instead of just a performer. She was even to wear a finely decorated choker with dazzling jewels and an elegant lace pattern. I looked into the mirror at her face and said, "It has just dawned on me that your eyes are 2 different colors. That is incredible and unique. Your hair is such a lovely color too, crimson and burning like a fiery passion." She nervously smiled as she responded,
Yes. I'm told my red hair complements my eyes. Most people don't notice the 2 colours right away, since hazel and green aren't too far off.
"Oh, I know someone with a similar condition, though her eyes are blue and green." I always couldn't help but notice how lovely we all looked once we were dressed by the master's design. But this time around, I also couldn't help but notice her dual-colored eyes. Upon noticing her eyes, it suddenly hit me. Red hair, 2 unique eye colors, a string instrument, the outfit with a choker. This poor new girl was to embody Mistress Charlotte. I felt sick, mortified in a way that mixed disgust with terror. How could the master think of his own child like that? She took notice of my reaction, and I was quick to save face and feign manners. "I really should get you finished and dressed," I squeaked. I hurried along with my task and reassured her as best as I could after leading her to the doors of the performance hall. "Please, just do as he asks and play your best. That is all I ask of you." Lisette nodded her head and began to turn away to face the gates of hell. I felt tears nearly well in my eyes as I made my attempts to behave like the mouse that I am, and scurry away to keep her from seeing me in such a way. I heard a small commotion, but it went quiet shortly after. It sounds as though it was a very private performance with just the master, so I would hope he was going easy on her. Neither Bernice nor I have seen the young girl since I left her at the doors. I have a theory that he might have no desire for her to live for the next day, and that is why hers is such a unique experience. I began to cry when I told Bernice that. She just held me closely as best as she could.
August 26th, Saturday, 1893. So it seems that I've discovered where we missing girls disappear to, or at least an idea of their places and hells we breach. Without much preparation, I was taken straight to my dressing room instead of practice and was dolled up. The headmistress then addressed me and said that it was time for me to leave as my carriage was here. I hadn't been given a chance to ask questions. I was just ushered out of the building and into a mobile with a somewhat older and thin brunette man standing beside it. He donned black clothing and a bow tie, standing very refined and proper. Prude, was my first thought. After I was practically shoved into the vehicle, the man entered, closing the door behind him. I tried talking with him, but he was rather silent and looked like he wasn't entertained in the idea of conversing with me. I felt as though he was looking down upon me past that pointed nose of his. I wasn't refined enough for his tastes, being a street rat I am. I say am, because you can take the rat out of the streets, but you'll never take the streets from my blood and bones. They were built from that. I bet I wouldn't have a nice conversation with the man anyway. Finally, the carriage had stopped and I found myself in front of a huge estate. It was gorgeous and well decorated with materials. I'm not sure the name. Marble? Porcelain? It doesn't matter. Standing outside the giant doors was a pretty young thing with golden hair and an obedient aura. She was wearing maid clothes, I think, to which I thought that perhaps the man I shared an uneasy ride with must have been the butler or footman.
"You will take her to the dressing room and have her prepared for tonight,"
the man demanded of the girl, finally revealing his voice to me.
"The master would like for her to perform as soon as possible."
She was a beautiful blonde, maybe technically a ginger, with her hair up in some strange loose wrappings where most of it was down, but a bit was up at the back centre. The girl looked into my eyes and for a split second I could swear I could see some pain and horror in her blue eyes for a short moment. Then she turned to the man whilst bowing her head with a soft and sweet,
"Yes, sir."
She opened the doors and turned to me with a slight, hesitant smile.
"This way, ma'am."
I snorted a bit. "Ma'am? Me? I'm pretty sure I'm younger than you. Not to mention less refined. Call me Lisette, or Liz. It's easier." The girl was about to give an earnest grin before fear crept into her face and the man spoke.
"Hurry along. No time should ever be allowed to be wasted."
In a quick yet calm response, the girl said,
"Yes, sir."
and waited for me to enter the manor. I almost wanted to refuse to move until I got some answers, but seeing how mousy this girl was in this situation, I felt like I would get her in trouble, and that was the last thing I wanted to give as a first impression to someone who seemed so sweet and scared. I moved past her and the man followed, going off somewhere in the house after firmly locking the doors, and then the girl crept around from behind me.
Follow me.
She bowed and proceeded to lead me to her set of stairs. Can you talk with me? I inquired, hoping that maybe someone can finally give me answers.
Technically, yes, ma'am.
I told you, it's Lisette.
Hope.
I beg your pardon?
That's my name.
Well, it's very lovely.
Thank you. So is Lisette. Is it French?
Yes. I had begun to realize that we were at the top of the stairs and Hope was unlocking a door not too far from them. What am I actually doing here? Performing for your master? Is that what this place does? Has us go out into the world and perform for private audiences? Maybe this is a good way to make money, I foolishly said to myself out loud, unbeknownst to what was truly at foot. As I said that, Hope had just finished unlocking the door and stood very still and silent with the sombre matter.
I wish I could say it was that simple.
What? What do you mean by that? You came from the same place as I, didn't you? There was suddenly a pole of intense dread piercing my heart.
I'm sorry, ma'am, but I shan't answer any more of these sort of questions for the rest of the night. The walls have ears and the corners have eyes.
She opened the door fully and stepped aside for me to enter.
But I will give you the best advice that I can. Do as you're told and try your best, because failure will not be tolerated.
Are we prisoners here? She looked at me as though she had already answered my question. Damn it, Hope, please! What are you so scared of? I won't enter that room until I know.
And then you shall most definitely have a horrid night, and have let my words of advice go to waste.
You'll suffer too, won't you? I'd get you in trouble if I don't go in.
Most likely.
Then answer my questions and neither of us will have to suffer.
I am no longer concerned about myself as of this point.
What a mortifying thing for a person to say. I sighed and came to realize that I wasn't going to win this. I entered the room and was led to a vanity. Hope began to help me undress, as I wasn't comfortable with her doing it on her own, since I was perfectly capable of dressing and undressing myself. She kept complimenting me, saying what lovely red hair I had and how amazing my eyes were. Though, when she mentioned my eyes, she commented that she knew someone with a similar condition and got so silent and turned paler than she was already, which I thought would be impossible since she was fair in every sense of the word. She quickly finished up with dressing me and put my hair up like a refined aristocrat.
There you go.
Hope began.
You look lovely. Probably the first time you've dressed like a proper lady before, no?
I must admit, the clothing was beautiful and very uncommon to me, but I was at such an unease, I felt my voice shake a bit as I asked, "What is waiting for me?" She was silent for a moment until she said,
You play which instrument?
"Cello."
Well, downstairs you will find a cello sitting center of a performance hall. A man will ask you to play it. Now it is your choice to play it or not, but I highly advise you to do exactly what he says.
Her next words came out almost like a whisper, as though she hadn't intended for me to hear.
I always do what he says.
There was an emphasis on this man. And what if I don't?
I cannot answer.
Hope, please!
I cannot answer! Because he comes up with something new each time.
I tried to swallow my pride, but my throat couldn't handle the lump too well. I'll do it for you then.
Thank you, ma'am.
Please, don't call me that.
Thank you, Lisette.
Hope grabbed a hold of my hand and walked me down, and then brought me to a hallway. She just stood at the open doorway and scurried away before any more could be said. I entered the room and saw a cello sitting near a harpsichord. It felt as though it was there waiting just for me. I called out to see if anyone was around, but the place was empty. I marched right up to the instrument and sighed in annoyance. It was probably the nicest and most expensive-looking cello I'd ever seen, but that was not what impressed me. The fine carvings and designs were a nice touch, though. I picked up the accompanying bow on its stand by its side and inspected it well, and I swear to you, I was hardly there for a minute in this big room that would have taken more than a minute to walk to the centre of from the only door, when I heard a man's voice.
"It is rather lavishing,"
the voice started.
"No?
I turned and saw the tall man with an eye patch staring right at me from the room centre.
Hello again, mein Hastier."
Whatever the hell that meant. So this was who I was supposed to obey. I swore at that moment that if Bernice was no longer alive, I would have my revenge on him, for he was most likely involved.
I hope you're well after that long trip. You're not used to traveling, I believe. But then again, you are very young. Younger than most who have had the honor to grace these halls. But that shouldn't be too much of a problem.
A problem? A problem for what exactly? Why would my age matter?
Your skills and beauty excuse you of this minor issue, mein Hastier.
The air around him made me feel sick. I had no idea what the hell he was going on about anymore. I don't think I did from the start.
Ah, where are my manners?
He almost sounded rehearsed.
I am Count von Dunkelheit. Play for me a classic tune. Largo or Bach, something like that.
I could feel my cheeks burn as I tried my best not to glare at this man. He introduced himself like I'd care, but he could be a god, and I still wouldn't care. But I promised Hope that I'd try for her, so I began to think of something I was familiar with during my rehearsals. The man's face was pasted with a sickly grin, to which I instantly lost my composure. I wouldn't! I did not like the one thing about this situation, and even more so about this man. I threw the cello to the floor, though I felt bad for it as it had done nothing wrong, but I felt as though it was mocking me in my background. Immediately, he stood up with a snarl like he was some kind of rabid dog or beast. He was obscenely yelling at me in what seems like several languages, English, French and Irish included, but the gist of what I caught on was him ordering me to do as he said and pick up the instrument. I'm also pretty certain he used profane and degrading words. I was ready to fight, but then I realised I was no match, as I had eaten nothing all day, wore rather restricted clothing, and, staring at him better in that moment, to say he was tall was an understatement. Maybe he seemed like a dainty aristocrat, but I knew all too well that looks can be deceiving. I picked up the bench, which was heavier than I expected, from the harpsichord and threw it in his direction as I ran straight for the doors with a newfound speed and burst of energy. My heart was racing faster than my thoughts, but I was able to make it up the staircase and scan my surroundings and options. I saw a cupboard or a pantry or closet, whatever it was. I thought it would serve me well for this new game of hide and seek. I began frantically messing with the latch, but my hands had suddenly become sweaty in the last minute. Suddenly, I heard a loud whisper from a woman call out, "Over here!" I turned to see a girl with her head in the doorway not too far from me. She was watching me intently with a face of concern.
"If you hide in the closet, he'll find you in no time. Come in here, he'd never check this room."
There was a loud thud noise followed by profanity and curses from downstairs that startled my soul out of my being.
"Hurry, before he comes up here!"
I decided to take my chances and ran to the girl, who widened the door enough to let me in quickly and then clicked it behind us. I began to try and speak, but she immediately shushed me.
"Shh! While I'm not certain if this will work, I am certain that he will come if he hears us talk."
We stood pressed against the door, listening to him thrash about, ripping open the closet door first and pacing around the upstairs, opening other doors. I never knew that being silent would be so crushing. Eventually, we heard him go downstairs again, and the girl that had been holding her hand to my mouth sighed.
"He's gone."
I wasn't about to ask questions, because nothing ever seemed to come from them in the last 2 to 3 years, so I simply introduced myself. "I'm Lisette."
"Charlotte."
She smiled peacefully at me. I looked her up and down, seeing that she donned night clothing, and the room we were in was a bedroom, so I presumed it must be hers.
"Are you alright?"
"I don't know."
"Lisette's a very lovely name. Is it French?"
"Thank you. Yes, Charlotte is originally French too, isn't it?" I couldn't help but notice her unique accent. It wasn't entirely British. She almost sounded to have married accents, similar to my father's, the man from downstairs, and that of an English native.
"Yes, that is correct."
She bit her lip and averted her eyes for a moment. But before she did, I took notice that she had the same condition with her eyes that I did. The only difference was that hers were green and blue. She was brought here like I was. Did the madman downstairs have a type and was privy to girls that looked like us? Red hair and unique eyes? Possibly of French origin too?
"Do you have any questions that maybe I could answer?"
So it's all right to ask questions? I thought there were ears in the rooms and eyes or something like that. She giggled.
"In a matter of speaking, but I won't lie to you, but that doesn't necessarily mean you'll like the truth or would want to hear it, but I think it's something you should know."
Charlotte leaned in closer, which was usually an unwelcome gesture by gentlemen, and sometimes a disconcerting one from ladies that were strangers, but I didn't mind the gesture coming from her. She seemed to be trying to inspect me to make sure I was unharmed, so it was rather a friendly means.
Would you like to stay in my room for the rest of the night?
He honestly couldn't check this room?
No. At least he never has.
Then I think I shall stay. If that is all right with you.
I wouldn't have offered otherwise. Should I help you out of those uncomfortable clothes?
What? Why?
So you can sleep tonight?
I don't know if I'll be able to after all that I had to stomach.
It will only get worse. So you should enjoy the peace when you can get it. You will need as much rest as possible to face the rest of your life.
Surely there must be some escape.
I've lived here for 24 years, and the only successful escape that I have ever seen has been through death.
I shuddered.
I know, very straightforward, but I did say I will be honest. This is no bakery, and I am not a baker. You shan't get any sugarcoating from me.
So, you'll answer my questions?
Yes.
Who is that beast?
The Count von Dunkelheit.
What the hell does that even mean?
Shh, I wasn't finished. The lord and master of this estate and anything that should touch it, including people like you. He buys young women such as yourself and has them perform musical talents, either for himself or a crowd of his business partners. But it's not only that. Should she falter, she would be punished. That is not all, for they don't need to perform or be disobedient to play victim to their foul and cruel games of madness and atrocities.
Surely we could tell the Bloomers. I mean, I know they haven't done much for my family or neighbourhood, but there must be something that should be done. This is human trafficking.
They won't do anything because they will never find out. A constable is one of the Count's many business partners and guests.
You mean that in jest, right?
Sadly, no.
She listened off into the distance as the clock's bell chimed.
It's late. You need rest. If there be any more questions, I'll answer them later.
I decided that I would settle with that. I am tired and do not feel to be in harm's way while near this girl, so I shall trust her. I just can't believe this is real. It sounds like it's some sort of sick story. I feel so tired, but I don't think I'll be able to sleep.